Hey everyone, Denver Casado here, founder of Beat by Beat, and I am joined with Dave Hudson, playwright, book writer, lyricist. How you doing, Dave?
Doing well. Will, pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to talk to you again. It's been a while.
So our goal here is to revisit Tut Tut, a 60-minute musical that we wrote 8 years ago that is published through Beat by Beat. And it's been a while since we've chatted about this show, and we thought we'd take this opportunity to catch up, to talk about the process of writing the show. We're going to play for you some early demos of the music and the songs and how they kind of progressed, and to just chat about the process of creating Tut Tut. Dave, before we get into it, can you give what is Tut Tut about? What was the original pitch of like what this show could be?
Honestly, it was the original idea was the Prince and the Pauper, but thrown into the world of young Prince Tut before he became king. Sort of a fun way to explore that aspect of theory of history and where it was, and but then use a familiar tale that we didn't have to reinvent too much.
In real life, Tut Tut was a pretty young kid, right? When he became king, like 10 years old, 12 or
I'm always trying to. I think he was 11 or 12, and he was only around for 5 or 6 years. He died, I know, before 20. They're never sure exactly what happened. It might have been ailments or something why he passed away. But he was also in the heart of a lot of those really big kings, and that sort of the height of of the Egyptian pharaohs. So he's a cool kind of touch point to study that part of the world and that time in history.
100%. We get lots of emails from educators that do the show, and they're excited because they could then tie it into the curriculum of learning about ancient Egypt, and stuff like that, which is pretty awesome. I know my son is super into that right now, like all the ancient Egypt, the pyramid shows, like the discovering all the old tombs. But it's pretty fascinating. So let's talk about the genesis of this show. So this came out of a need of creating the show, which you do every year for the Actors Garden, which is a children's musical theater program that you and your wife run in Illinois, correct?
Yep. Yeah. So we have been running that as our own theater for over 10 years now, and she's been working with other theaters in the area for way more than that. And then years ago, we decided to dive in and start doing original musicals instead of, the ones we all know, right? Because we felt like there was a need, and we also um, basically tailor our shows for our camp. We do have a big summer camp, and so our shows always try to have at least one speaking line or sung line for everyone in the cast. There is a chorus, but we don't want to just put kids just in the chorus. So that's not always possible, but that's part of the design around these. So that evolved too, that we want to be sure that each kid has that moment. And that's been fun. And kind of to riff on that and reflect on what you said, is that we don't want to do the same show every year or the same thing, and we do a lot of enrichment activities in our camp. So that idea of we have one show that takes place in the Middle Ages and one that takes place in with Greek mythology. So we try to find things that there will be a lot of enrichment opportunities, educational opportunities. So with Tut Tut, it really, you and I got together and sort of talked about that, and this felt like both a great match for the theater that we're with, and possibly, and it was great. You were really great. You're like, yeah, let's write it. And it wasn't really until the end of the process where you said, hey, I guess midway process, you're like, hey, would you be interested in us doing this at Beat by Beat as well and publishing it? You were really about the show first, and then seeing how it fit in your catalog. So that was a great experience.
It was awesome working with you. I mean, so we first met through the Northern Sky Theater company out in Door County, Wisconsin. You've written and produced many shows out there. I had written a show out there, and we tell everybody a little bit about, I guess, your background as a playwright, as a lyricist. Like, how many musicals have you written at this point?
I think I'm at 31. I think I am. I'm not sure. I lose count because there were some one acts in there, and those are produced. That number is the produced ones, not the. If you're a writer, you have many that fall by the wayside. But those are the ones that have made it to the stage in some form. I got into it, honestly. It was actually through my wife. I'd started writing I'll tell you the first one. For her first show I ever wrote for her specifically was called The Problem with Shoes, and it was based on the German folktale, The 12 Dancing Princesses. And it was, she said, she came home and she said, I have 11 girls and no boys in my cast or in my class, and I need something to do, which is very common. Anyone watching this knows that. And so I wrote her, that was not a musical. But then as she went on and got bigger with the kind of things she did, I eventually wrote a piece called Pots and Pan, which was a sort of a sequel to Peter Pan. And from there, I've just evolved and also joined in, I think were you a member of the BMI workshop in New York?
Yep.
Yeah. So Chicago had a workshop for a while out of the same kind of family of musical theater education. There are very few places to learn to write musicals.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize there was a Chicago program.
Yeah, there was a gentleman out here named John Sparks, and John ran both the LA workshop and the Chicago workshop, and he had studied under Lehman Engel, who founded all of this. Lehman Engel was kind of the grandfather of teaching people how to write musicals. So I was a member of the workshop out here, and I did that after I'd written Pots and Pan, and then I just got lucky and started getting produced specifically up at Northern Sky Theater in Wisconsin, which, as you mentioned, has done a lot of my stuff. And I also started writing with other people like you for our theater here in Oak Park. So it's, as a playwright, I'll be honest, I'm super fortunate to have places that do my shows. And to be a kind of a resident playwright at two places is a really fortunate circumstance to be able to write that many shows. So that's where I come from.
That's awesome. I mean, 100%. Northern Sky Theater is incredible because they commission and produce musicals every summer and premiere them and are incredibly supportive of the writers and the community. And it's just such an incredible place to work as a writer. And like, I'm really glad we connected through that. So Actors Garden is doing Tut Tut this summer, right? So they're revisiting it.
It is.
And you said, and every 7 years, you guys basically revisit a show, like in rep, essentially. Can you describe a little bit about how that process works and why you feel that works for the theater company?
Yeah, honestly, the way it came about was I call it the Disney rotation. And what I mean by that is that Walt Disney figured out years ago, he did Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs as his first animated musical or animated film. And he figured out that every 7 years, another generation of kids comes along who haven't seen it. So before, DVDs and online streaming and all that, you just had the theater, and he would re-release every one of his shows every 7 years into the theater, and it would do well because there were all these kids who hadn't seen it. And we figured out that exact same thing applies at our theater. Our theater runs roughly from about 7 or 8 to 14 or 15. And there really isn't there is a young age that we cut off for our camp because it's a 4-day a week or a 5-day a week camp, and that's just too much for younger kids. But with that, we let people stay. And then typically people just age out and they move on to other things when they get to junior high and high school. But the fun thing is a lot of our kids who have been through our camp will end up becoming counselors for a few years too. So we have a whole continuum at our camp, which is great. And we every year we'll have we have 75 kids in our camp each session. And every year we'll have at least, I'd say 4 or 5 kids who have been through the whole rotation, who have been through all 7 shows. And they started as like the little, like in the show we're talking about here, like they might've been a camel seller. Right. And then they've moved up to, leads and things like that in the shows as they go. So it's a really fun experience. And to touch on, we said 8 years. Well, I won't touch on the year which shall not be named, but that really threw a wrench in everyone's lives, right? So we kind of skipped a year and then jumped back into the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so cool how the community that forms when you have kids that have gone through the whole cycle, because it just keeps repeating itself because the younger kids are looking up to those old kids now that have like at the top, and then they're coming back to help with the show. And so now they have in their mind, like, that's what I'm going to do. When after I graduate through the cycle, I'm going to be one of those people that comes back and helps too. And then it creates this just incredible community that is really, really unique. That's really awesome.
Yeah, it is cool. And we have all these rituals, right? We tell, jokes at lunchtime and songs we sing and all that, that like any camp. If you've ever been to a summer camp, they have these things you do. And the other cool thing, since we're talking about this, we have a thing we call the swell, where when the kids are sitting in the auditorium at lunch, all of a sudden they'll just start singing, and it'll often not be a song from that summer, but from prior summers. And suddenly everyone just spontaneously will burst into song. And it's just this fascinating thing to hear those kids, with those songs that are part of their lives forever, which, again, it's true with the beat by beat shows, that there's nothing like a musical that just cements itself in someone's memory.
100%. I remember those as a kid myself. I remember, those are such formative years, and so the shows stick with you and the songs stick with you. That's awesome. So let's talk Tut Tut. So you I think you essentially sent me an email. It was like, I had this idea for the show. It's basically the Prince and the Pauper meets the story of King Tut. And would you be interested in working on it? And I feel like our working process was very unique. We both work with other collaborators, but this process that we did was pretty like seamless and very independent, but like gelled kind of together quickly. You wrote essentially a draft of the show, sort of before I even kind of came in and started writing music for it. Like I was revisiting some of our earlier emails in preparation for this conversation. And I think one of the first things you sent me outside of that, hey, does this idea sound cool to you, was like, by the way, here's a 45-page script of like the first draft of the show. And like, here's where the song moments could go. Is that how you remember it starting? Like,
we mentioned that I've written 30 musicals, so I'm sure you're right. That sounds about how my work. I think you're right, and that's my working process. Typically, is that I do ideally like to get a fairly solid draft in place. I find I'm not good at. I will tend to shut down if I try to talk through the whole show. Beat by beat, and then I'll kind of get, not beat by beat press, but like piece by piece. Yeah. I will tend to like steer away from it. So if I can have a solid piece, it might change a bunch of times, but I will typically try to have a draft in place, and sometimes even lyrics, sometimes not. Depends.
So after you had sent that draft, I think that I sent back like a long email, sort of like being like, this is awesome, and like a lot of like thoughts and notes, and just sorry, my screen just went blank. Did you see that?
I did not, actually. I did not see it. So
that's good. And then I started drafting some versions of some of the songs, and I feel like, because we both kind of had written quite a few musicals before, you had went through the workshop, I went through the workshop, there's this shorthand that kind of exists for being able to communicate when it comes to working on songs. I was looking through some of the original recordings, and a lot of the first process for me is sort of taking parts of the lyrics that are already there, writing the song how I think the music would feel the best and moves the story along, which may include some of the lyrics that are already there, but may include also some da-da-das where I think like there could be something here that sounds like this. And I think that was an example of the opening in which we, there was some stuff that already existed there on the page. I wrote a draft of the song that included other parts with da-da-das. And then you kind of came back, and I figured it would be kind of cool to show how that song, I have 3 different versions of how that song came to be. And so I figured I'd play some of that here.
I think that's terrific. Like I think people will find this fascinating to see the genesis of this song. It was a really cool way of working.
All right, let's see here. Okay, so here is I don't have the original voice memos. Typically, when I record a song first, I just do a voice memo on a phone. That's their ultimate early draft. This was sort of the second version, in which I was just at the piano, recorded myself. I think on a good microphone is sent it over to Dave with some da 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 da's, and let's see what this sounds like. Uh, Da 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 ya da da ba da ya ba da ba da ba da ba ba da. Here we are in Egypt, but it's not ancient yet. The desert is a dry one, but the river's wet. Each year comes the season, the Nile floods the banks, and to the flood god Happy we give our thanks. Anyways, you get the idea. It keeps going, going, going. So, what did you do with those? What were you thinking when you got the da 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 da's? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you have any? Do you remember that process?
I do. I remember hearing it and listening to it a lot, sort of probably like you do with your voice memos, right? You go through and sort of find it. And so I would just listen. I would try to hear it, and then I found those rhythms, like you can hear you say da 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 da, and then so there's a thing in musical theater, if you haven't heard of it, called prosody, and prosody is when you match the natural rhythm of the word to the melody and be sure it kind of matches up into the same idea. So that naturally fell in. We're talking about Egypt, things like that. So I hear da 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 da, and so you hear that da da da. So that matches pyramids, right? So here by the pyramids, it naturally falls in. That sentence just fell into place with that, and really worked well. And this is the first time really that I'd ever worked this interactively with a composer. Often I do the whole lyric and then it comes back and they'll say, hey, could you fix this or that? But for you and I, it was a really cool process of you would find maybe a hook of a verse or a chorus, but then the rest wouldn't have anything to do with the other stuff that I'd written. It was really like, here's where I think the heart of it is. And you'd find that heart and then we'd work together to zero in. So that was a cool process.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of writing songs with other people. It's that part. I have a very music centric side of where it should go, and then I work with somebody who has a very story lyric centric side. And sometimes I'm too music forward, where I'm just like, this is going to sound cool, but like doesn't necessarily work with like where we're going lyrically. And so sometimes there's a little bit of push and forth, but I feel like that's the balance you want to take sometimes. And so yeah, so you wrote this incredible lyric to that da da da's, and let's hear what that sounded like. So this next one, I think, is a little bit more of an official piano demo with those new lyrics. Here by the pyramids, temples are built to the sun, to the sun, to the sun, to the sun. So bow down to the pharaohs, everyone. Here we are in Egypt, but it's not ancient yet. The desert is a dry one, but the river's wet. Each year comes the season, the Nile floods the banks, and to the flood god Happy we give our thanks. Here by the pyramids, temples are built to the sun, to the sun. So yeah, it's coming along. It's getting fleshed out.
Right. And I remember struggling with that to the sun at the end, because you had that repeating phrase, and I kept trying to find something else to put in there, like to the sun, boy, it's hot. Look at this, whatever. And finally I just landed. I'm like, I remember talking to you and saying, I think we just have to repeat that phrase, to the sun, 3 times. And it really worked out to kind of give it that, kind of mix of ritual and also pop feel to that lyric of like, there's a lot of repetition in pop, and that really found a way, it just fell into to drive the song, to drive that song forward. And it was great to hear that first time when you sang it, and that what we just heard. And I was like, okay, that does work. And you were great. You're like, well, let's try it.
Yeah, I mean it's simple, but it works. It works great, particularly when it starts to overlap towards the end. We'll play some of that, like where and the lyric of "To the Sun," it sounds so simple, but it is so perfect for these types of like repeated things, particularly where you're laying on, because it starts with this hard consonant, and then but then the rest is like very easy to say. So it's like the intro, which is syncopated, to the sun, to the sun, to the sun, to this. It's got this like very easy rhythmic, almost like rap like kind of feel to it once you get going, which is maybe here. Maybe not.
And now, guess what? So bow down to the fair, to the sun. So bow down to everywhere. Here by the pyramids, temples are built to the sun. Here by the pyramid, to the sun, to the sun, to the sun.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. Let's take a listen now to the actual recording with and see how that sounds. So here's with the orchestrations, which were done by Andy Ronison and Andrew Fox. Here we go.
Here by the pyramids, temples are built to the sun, to the sun, to the sun, to the sun. So bow down to the pharaohs, everyone. Here we are in Egypt, but it's not ancient yet. The desert is a dry.
Let's force forward to that ending part.
Here by the pyramids, temples are built to the sun. By the pyramid, to the sun, to the sun, to the sun. So bow down to the pharaohs. And now.
So yeah, it's kind of like the regression of a song there.
Yeah, it's always fascinating. I think it's fascinating. Any song and the bare melody is it's just a blueprint, right? The starting melody is that, and then it takes that idea of adding more voices and then the orchestration, and suddenly then you have what we just heard. And what I love about that is it not only does it inform you that you're in a kind of structured society, which ancient Egypt was and had hierarchies, which this song does. But it also, especially when we get into that round, by the way, there's my dogs in the other room. But, it also drives the choreography. It naturally gives the people staging the show something to do there. You're not going to just sit and sing that. You're going to see some movement. You're going to see that because and even if that is it makes it kind of easy for the performers because it could be repetitive motions, repetitive steps that they just do again and again. So it makes it easier for the choreographer as well. So I really, I came back to revisit this show a couple of months ago since we're doing it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in this score that Denver created. So it's great.
I mean, the way we created together. I mean, I think that you write musicals, you start to think about things differently. I think that there's a tendency in the beginning to just sort of think about what could be the most the most cool sounding song, as opposed to like visually what is exactly happening on stage. And when you work with directors and you get musicals up on their feet, you think about this a lot. And I know I think about this a lot. And the beat by beat shows, especially because, you don't want restless kids on stage not doing anything. It's like, what are they actually doing? We're not going to have a 3-minute song where, there's just like a sit and sing at the audience. It's like, how is this like visually dynamic? How are we giving kids something to do? And so I think that's something, it's really, you learn to think about the more shows you create. So let's take a look at the second song. This is Different Life for Me. This is the song when the two main characters meet and they have their idea of what they come up with their plan of what they could possibly do, which is the prince is going to the king is going to switch places with the pauper, with the peasant, and the peasant is going to take the place of the king. And this is, I think, also a first early demo. I haven't really listened to many of these, so I'm assuming there will be da-da-das in this as well. I think this is the first demo I sent to you.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it.
Every day they lay my clothes out and they tell me what to do. Every day the same old schedule, but I long for something new. Every breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they'll tell me clean your plate. Every day I must do lessons, study math, and then debate. I long for adventure, I long to be free. There must be something different, a different life for me. Every day I wake up hungry.
So this sounds pretty fleshed out already. Like not this pretty much sounds exactly like how the recording turned out. Let's see.
Different life on errands.
Yeah, looks like all the lyrics are here already.
Yeah. Maybe we got it more right the first time.
Now he.
Oof. This is the other thing that my collaborators have to always deal with, which is me terribly singing all of our demos.
Okay, so for anyone watching this is a vulnerable moment for Denver. But like composer demos are like, this is great. Like this is such an insight into it, and the point is to get it across, right? Is get the idea fleshed out, and that's just what it is. And back in the old days, like 30s, 40s, it would always be like Irving Berlin, right? He was not a great singer, and not even necessarily a great player, but this is how he would sit down in front of people, and you see this in all the old movie musicals. You see people, well, this is how it goes, that, and what about this? And that's how it still is done. And then we just tend to hear more polished demos as the process goes on, but it's a terrific part of the process that I just love. I love.
It's the best. It's the best part. Yeah, it's really, really fun. I mean, it's also awesome hearing the full realized versions, but I know I enjoy making these demos a little bit too much. I think that comes out in my recording sometimes. I just like totally get into it. I just like totally go for it.
That's the point. That the story of, not to go too far into musical theater minutia, but Fred Ebb was not a great singer, but he was enthusiastic. And they always say that Liza Minnelli, when she does, her big wit, she got that actually from Fred Ebb.
No way.
When he would sing things, he would be animated and do that. So enthusiasm is important. But just to touch on this song is a really good song. I mean, I listened to it, and it is, in terms of a musical theater song, it's really wonderful. You're seeing two people singing, and you're seeing a transition, and it's actually a musical scene, not just a song. You're hearing dialogue. And, I would put this up against, if anyone said, I wanted, I know that like Texas has those, duet competitions. I'd be like, you should look at this, because it's a phenomenal, just standalone piece.
Yeah, it's got definitely has a very clear, strong arc to it. We have a character sing about what they want, another character react to that, they sing about what they want. Together, they kind of like meet in this middle until they come up with a plan. There's a change, there's a shift, and then together they both sing about, what they're going to do about it and like how they're going to execute this plan going forward to get what they want. So we have like, within 2 minutes, this whole really cool development. Let's play a little bit of the official version of that song.
Every day they lay my clothes out and they tell me what to do. Every day the same old schedule, but I long for something new. Every breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they'll tell me clean your plate. Every day I must do lessons, study math, and then debate. I long for adventure, I long to be free.
I lied. It's 3 minutes 40 seconds. So in 4 minutes, they accomplish all that.
So that he might teach me letters, and I'll gain some knowledge there. I don't need adventure, I must disagree. There must be something different, a different life for me.
then they come up with a plan.
That when I met you, that you would join.
And then we have our finale.
Oh, it's coming enough.
Now here's to adventure, a new point of view. Yes, this is something different, a different me.
Yeah. So fun song.
Yep.
Next we have Perfect Protocol.
Oh,
Let's see what this first version was that I had sent to Dave. If there's a...
It appears our young prince has forgotten his lessons. So dot your I's and cross your T's. This is what we say to you. Perfect protocol must be practiced. That's what proper princes do.
So it sounds like this one had a chorus, and then I sort of came up with a verse, and you eventually ended up writing to that.
yep. Yeah. And it's cool how you found, and there's cool words that fall together. Like, there's protocol, etiquette, there's all these like triple sounding words that really fell together and give it that, that they're staccato words that lent themselves to this setting that we're talking about.
Yeah, and the music was written to really match these characters that are talking about clearly how to follow the rules and stay in line, as opposed to A Different Life, when this is like a big soaring emotional piece. I long for adventure. This is everything is very refined and very even and very March-like almost.
Yeah.
And, let's hear the recording to see what lyrics ended up going on top of that.
When it comes to rules and etiquette, which is what we do in court, every word and every move you do are subject to report.
You must practice manners carefully when you sit upon a throne. All it takes is one mistake to start a war all on your own.
So dot your I's.
So incredible. Like, those lyrics are really, really great. Just so natural. I think people underestimate how hard it is sometimes to make lyrics just be so natural like that. But particularly the da-da-da, like carefully, protocol, like these are things that sometimes take a lot of work. I'm sure they differ you, but just really, natural, beautiful execution of sort of lyric writing.
It was good teamwork for sure. It was you gave me and you mentioned earlier that you'll push melody, but because you were a musical theater person, sometimes if you work with a composer who isn't musical theater, they will write these melodies that are beautiful, but they don't lend themselves to words. And we just heard that first one that lend itself to words. There were great words that were just waiting to be found there. It wasn't hard at all on that end. It might have been a little work to get the right phrasing and the right idea there, but overall the melody itself helped me a lot.
Cool. And then next, so that was sort of like a group for the royalty essentially. And then next we sort of like, when we're writing these shows, I'm sure as you're writing lots of shows with the Actors Garden, we're always trying to feature many different groups of kids. Being able to rehearse them separately is also easy as well. So we next having a big group number of the peasants essentially was sort of like what is needed. And this ended up being that song, Take What You Need. And I don't know what shape this is in, but here's the demo.
Well, when you feel like that. Oh, life on the street can be very rough. Though we get stuff to eat, it is rarely enough. Yes, orphans like us must fend for ourselves. So shops all around best be watching their shelves. Though in Egypt our society is based on trust, it isn't always easy, so we do what We must. Yes, we sneak a bit of bread from the baker.
So this sounds pretty fleshed out.
Yeah.
And I have a couple other ones here. This was, I mean, The Flood is, I think, one of my favorite songs from the show, just because it has this incredible dramatic feel to it and this epic feel to it. And I think that since I embarrassed myself showing my vocal recordings, I have one from you, Dave, where you basically, there's this epic ending, and it kind of builds and builds and builds, and there's this part at the end where there's this extended coda, and you'd written this lyric, and maybe I wrote it and it wasn't quite working out, and sometimes the lyricist needs to record themselves singing like how they imagined it in their head to give to the composer to be like, oh, like I get it now. So this is at the end of The Flood. Do you mind if I play this?
No, great. Yeah.
This is Dave had written a lyric, and I think I was like, do you mind recording, or you had just offered like, here's how I'm hearing it in my head. And so here is the a cappella version of the ending of The Flood.
'Cause far away in Africa they heard us when we cried. Yes, far away in Africa the river god replied. Yes, far away in Africa where shoe and tough nut play, the waters come and flood the land and feed the crops beside the sand. So high up there they heard our prayer. And then the waters slowly rise and wash the bad away, or something like that.
You have a much better voice than I do. That was nice. Let's listen to that.
Thanks.
Let's listen to that ending to see what that ended up being.
And flood the God replied, yes, far away in Africa, where shoe and tough nut play, the waters come and flood the land and feed the crops beside the sand. So high up there, they heard our prayer, and then the waters slowly rise and wash the bad away.
Yeah. I love that song too. I came back to that, and again, I was like, I think what I like about that, Denver, is that it's the way you treated it, the way you brought it out, is it's cinematic. And what I mean by that is that those images in there, and it feels almost like a movie score, right? So you have these images describing flooding the land and the water rising, and you can literally see it, which, we can't flood the stage usually. So it's that magic of theater, of giving people this image of what world they're in such a good way. It's really a cool moment in the show, and it's definitely one of my favorites too.
I love seeing visually how groups bring it to life too. So here's like a version of The Flood here. The water. This is from Palo Alto Children's Theater production of Tut Tut.
Yeah, the cloth. You got to do the cloth.
You got to do the cloth.
I love it.
I got some other ones here. Let's see.
Oh wow, look at that. It's just
Beautiful. This is the American School in London.
That's stunning. That is stunning.
I think I could even play a video of some of that. Let's see here. Let's see if this will work. Sorry, I should have planned this a little bit better.
King is a bit late. It seems so. If he doesn't show up soon, he might have to.
When did the flood happen? I think earlier.
Yeah, I think just a little bit.
There we go.
Just like the river Otter. We prayed for the flood to get here. We walked through the rising water.
Oh, that's really cool.
The ground gets wet here.
Yeah, cool stuff. It's just really, really beautiful seeing some of these sets and like staging designs. Cool. Let's see. I think that's kind of all I have for some of the old demos I was able to dig up. Oops. So we had we wrote a full draft of it. You were about to do it that summer with Actors Garden, and then we had all the orchestrations done, and then you ended up recording the vocals out there with the same actors that had rehearsed it that summer, or did you guys use your own different vocal actors for the recordings?
I think we were lucky enough to have that it was all kids from the show. Yeah, it was all. And when the great thing is then you don't have to rehearse them at all, really. You just show up to the studio, and so you gave us. It was either the orchestrations or at least the bass, so that it was the same tempo that we could use. And the fun thing is, like in that Perfect Protocol song, the second voice that sang was my daughter Paige, who was in the show. So that was cool to hear her again. And then I remember a couple of others. It was actually a girl singing, SETI, and she's graduating from college this year. She's probably in a couple of weeks, and she just played Dot in Sunday in the Park with George at her college production, and she's been working, in summer stock. So it's cool to see these kids go on and hear them when they were younger. It was fun. Yeah. So we recorded it, and again, like you and I working, it was this collaborative process of you sent the tracks, we recorded over here. Then they were, bouncing back and forth between New York, where we worked with Andrew and Andy, who are both orchestrators, and then back to you to do mixing. And do you do the final engineering and mixing on these?
I do, yeah. Most of them I do, yeah. A couple recent ones I've had somebody help out with that. But for most of these shows, yeah, I kind of do the final edits, the final mix on my own.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, we got the orchestrations from them. We got the vocals from you, and then I kind of we put it all together. Yeah,
and then since we're talking about the process, so when we were there and getting ready for publication, the cool thing is you and if I remember right, does Linda have a hand in sort of like polishing up the materials as well?
She does. Yeah, she always overlooks everything, gives notes, feedback on the final drafts.
Yeah. So and then it was not big things, but just little things of the final draft. Like, this might not be the right tone for all schools, and let's fix this little thing. And then making sure there's no typos, obviously the little ones, although it seems like one always slips through somewhere. But you went over that, and Linda did. And then, and then you put it together if you've seen Beat by Beat shows, they're terrific. And then you've got that intro, the student book that has the book, the words that people say, and then what are called vocal lead sheets all together. So you can print up just one thing for the kids. And then we have a piano vocal score. So that process was just fascinating to go from, okay, we have it good enough for the summer. And then moving on. And we worked with a music director who played live. And then we had a small pit here. And then moving it on and then sending out the package, which can be done on its own, right? If you have a music director who plays, great, but otherwise you've got the great backing tracks, which most schools use these days. So it was wonderful.
Awesome, yeah. So the show is available, for licensing to elementary schools, middle schools. Again, it's a 60-minute show, has a large cast. Has about 10 songs in it, and just a really, really fascinating, look into the world of ancient Egypt, but through a very contemporary story and contemporary music. And you can, if you had to be by Beat Press, you can download the perusal for free. So you could read the whole script for free, listen to all the songs just to see if it's a good fit for your community or not. I'm really excited to see the production this summer that the Actors Garden does. Like, definitely send us, some pics and videos, and we'll share them. That's gonna be really, really fun to see.
Yeah. We're really excited to revisit it, and it's fun because we still have some of the costume pieces, but it'll be brand new sets, right? Which means brand new staging. We learn things that work and don't work. So even though it's the same company and same show, it's going to be like all live theater. It's brand new with a new cast and new ideas. So I can't wait to share it with you.
That's awesome. And in case you're interested in checking out, Dave, you also started a website where you have shared some of the other shows that you've written with the Actors Garden as well, right?
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah. And that's musical.
It's musical theater worldwide, and pretty much how it sounds, and with a RE in a theater. That does feature 3 other shows that I've written for the Actors Garden. I haven't published all of them, but they're there, and super fun shows. Again, written. I would say that ours are just slightly longer, and probably a little more, I would say, middle schoolish. That just sometimes it falls a little better in there, and also the length. I mean, the magic number is 60 minutes for elementary to middle school, and ours tend to run more like 75 minutes plus. So slightly longer, but fun shows.
Cool. Yeah. Check it out. Musical Theater Worldwide. I think you can also listen to the songs there and of what you got, and some really fun stuff over there. So check it out. Awesome. Well, this is great catching up. Also, we didn't mention, but Dave also wrote, you guys probably know him from The Show Must Go Online. He was obviously an integral part of that creating of that mayhem, 17 days of creating that show. Dave's done some amazing work, and I'm sure we'll continue to do amazing work, but it's been great catching up and great revisiting some of these recordings, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks guys for watching. Right. I hope you guys got a little bit of something out of our process. So enjoy
and revisiting.
All right. We'll see you next time.